Okay, so I just showed you how to do the basic, quick and easy candy cane. We drew it on there and we folded it up. If you want to get a little bit more detailed, you can do a stitch design. So instead of doing a single one for the stitch design, what I'm going to do is a double one. So I've taken another cutout here, and this one here is going to be crossed candy canes. And the way to achieve that is to fold the t-shirt in half along the center line and stitch it up that way. So, and what I've done is I have a t-shirt, it's not been soaked in soda ash yet, it's dry, and I actually stuck another t-shirt inside it. So I have two t-shirts here that I'm working on. So what I'm going to do is center on just the front of the t-shirt there. So the way I do that, I stick my yardstick in here, center it up on that line. I pick that up, and I just line the line up there on top. And eventually I'm going to do an even more detailed stitching video, but I've put out an intro to stitching, and now this one, I'll show more detailed ones for more detailed designs, how I achieved that. But for now, I just wanted to get these holiday designs out. In case you want to make holiday designs for your friends and family, or to sell. Okay, so now I have two t-shirts folded in half with just the front pulled forward. So I'm going to put my candy cane design right on there. And then I'm going to draw it out with a pencil. And this is an artist pencil. I think it's a 6B. Also, I am working on the inside of the t-shirt, because sometimes the pencils or the dry erase markers don't always wash all the way out. So this way, if you have a line, it's going to be on the inside of your t-shirt instead of up on the front. So I'm just drawing just my line, and the reason I'm using a pencil instead of a washable marker is this has not been soaked in soda ash yet. So once I get it all the way stitched and then I pull the threads, at that point I will go soak it in soda ash, and the artist pencil will survive the soda ash where a washable marker is not going to survive. It gets wiped away or rinsed away too easily. So let's see here. Put that line back in. This here is where the two candy canes cross, and one is over top of the other. So I'm putting that line back in there. So this here is going to be my crossed candy canes. So what I'm going to do is start stitching it, and then I'll show you how we pull everything together. And whenever I'm stitching, I just try to look for runs where I can do just one long run on it. But I'm not going to try and do the whole candy cane, because trying to pull that much thread through this whole thing, it's possible to tear a hole in this. So I'm going to go from about here around to this edge here. The other thing when you're doing your stitching is just making sure that you don't bunch up the shirt and all of a sudden you get the back side of the shirt and the front side off center, because then that's going to mess up your design. So I try to make sure every now and then that I'm still flattening my shirt out, making sure that everything is lined up where it needs to be. And I use one of the ballpoint needles, so it doesn't have much of a point on it. I know you can't see it in here, but it doesn't have the sharp point on it like most needles do. And usually what I do is I try to work it through there. So you'll see me kind of wiggling things. I don't want to just force it through and possibly rip a little thread. They're just little teeny ones, but the more of those threads that you rip or break as you're doing your stitching, the more possibilities you have for a hole. So since this here is a knit type fabric, I try to just work that needle through the fabric itself rather than force it through. So that's what you'll see if you see me wiggling the fabric or the needle back and forth, is just to get that needle to fit through an already existing hole rather than making a new one. For my tying a knot is I just wrap it several times like that, and then I just poke that in through, and that just gives me a really big knot here, because you don't want to take a chance. If you tie too small of a knot and then you pull on it, it could pull right through the fabric. So if you have a nice big knot like one of these, then it's not going to pull through. It's going to give you more tension on the fabric itself where you're pulling at. Okay. So now I'm going to run from here, and I'm going to go all the way down to this line here. Okay, there's the candy cane. I've done just 3 stitches on this one here. But the other thing you need to do once you get it drawn, just stitched in, is draw your lines on the opposite side. So after I'm done stitching just the outside, I'll go in and draw these lines in. Okay, now the other thing that I do when I'm stitching and I have a lot of extra space is I'll put in some filler lines. Also, that helps me when I'm tying stuff up. So I have this one, just a single run here. So what I'm going to do is put another run from here on the inside about 1 inch or so away and bring it down so that I can tie those two together. So the filler lines, they give me a spot where I can tie off some of the outline lines, but it also helps gather some of this extra fabric up. So when I'm pulling my stitches, pulling everything tight, all of this extra fabric on the inside of the candy cane will be gathered up. Otherwise it kind of poofs up, and sometimes it will lay over top of my outlines, and then you can't get a nice even dye on it. So the filler lines serve a couple purposes. In the more detailed designs, I use a lot of the filler lines. That's how I'm able to keep the detail. That's why I always draw As soon as I'm done with the outline, that's when I draw the other side, because you don't want to get confused by the filler lines sometimes of which lines you need to draw. The filler lines don't need to be drawn on the other side because I'm not going to be putting any dye on them specifically. So what I do then is just bring this line, and I just bring it right down next to the other one. This here is the outline line, so I just bring those two to the same spot there. Let's see if I can show that. So this filler line here is going to be at the same spot where the other one is, and that way I can just pull those two together. It'll gather up the same space, the outline and the inside of the candy cane, and then I can just tie those two lines together. So that's another reason sometimes for the filler lines, is just to give me something to tie off the outline with. So I'll do that with each one of them, and then I'll take a look and see if I need to add extra fill lines in there also. But with this simple design, these ones might be enough for it. So we're just going to go up the other side where I put the other line at. And you just have to keep working around the shirt. I usually do this while I'm sitting watching TV or something in the evening time. Once you get the hang of it, you can sit and read, or not read, but watch a show, or listen to music, whatever you want to do. I don't have any music playing right now because of the copyright laws on YouTube. Okay, there's our tie-dye double candy cane, and I think I can just pull these stitches. I don't think that extra space in there is going to be a problem. So that's the next thing I'm going to do here. So when I'm pulling the stitches, I usually will go ahead and grab both of them. Since I did two of them here together, I'm going to pull both of those threads at the same time. And I usually will try to work the fabric over the threads here. If you try to pull from one side all the way along that whole pull, if it goes around too tight of a corner, you can create a lot of pressure in here, and that can cause a little hole if you tear too much of the fabric in that little fold. So now I'm going to pull the other ones. I'm leaving these ones loose. Sometimes it's nice to be able to adjust the fabric. I like to have my design lay as flat as possible. So sometimes you need to adjust one as you pull the other one. So as I pull these up tight, that's giving me my shape there, and I'm going to draw a couple of these lines a little bit darker so I can see them. That's another important thing, is being able to see all of your lines so that when you're putting your dies on, they go in the correct spots. So now I'm going to tie these two off. So I pulled that up tight. Everything is kind of laying nice and flat. That's how I like it. That's not the only way to do it, but that's how I do it. So I tie it up I usually will put a few knots in and then I just cut off the excess. And same for this one. I'm going to pull this other side up before I tie it off too. Okay, that one came up nice and tight and still everything laying flat, so we're going to tie that one off. Okay, now the last one here. Okay, so there's my double candy cane. And like I said, I got my lines. Yep, I can still see my lines on the front and the back. So the next thing I'm going to do is soak this in soda ash for 20 minutes. I'm going to check to make sure that all of the spots got covered here, and then I'll be back to dye this, so stay tuned. Okay, we're back with the double candy cane. I've soaked this in soda ash and spun it out so it's just barely damp now, and you can see my nice pencil lines are still there on the front and the back. So what I'm going to do is fold up the rest of this tee just to get it all contained. Usually what I do, I always tuck all the sleeves in together. So remember, I stuffed one shirt inside the other, so I have 4 sleeves here. So what I'm going to do is just kind of spread those out and then just tuck them inside each themselves here. And that way I don't have 4 layers of fabric laying over top of the rest of this fabric, which might leave a big white spot. This way at least the sleeves are all contained within themselves. And you can do it with long sleeve tees also, but it's a little more difficult because you got to kind of fold up all the length of the sleeve. So once I get that tucked in, then I just kind of scrunch up the rest of this. And you can do various things if you wanted. You could twist it and do a spiral. You could do a little accordion fold. I just tend to scrunch mine. That's the easiest way I find to gather them up. But you can do all kinds of stuff. So don't let my way of doing it determine your way of doing it. Alright. So with the kite string, tie this up. Okay, this time I'm going to dye this up, but I'm going to go in a couple shades of blue. So I'm going to put turquoise down first. And then I'll put a darker shade of blue over top of that. And I'm going to use a small bottle to outline with before I dye the rest of the shirt here. The small bottle just allows me to control the dye more, since I want to get up close to this line here. I'm going to still leave a little bit of a white gap there and just let the dye spread on its own. But this here allows me to get up there with a smaller amount of dye. And I'm going to go ahead and outline this one too, but I just want to get this turquoise on here and let it start spreading how it wants to spread. And then for the inside, on the last one, I put white, or the plain thick water down, and then I put red over top. This one here, I'm going to use thickened dye, and I'm just going to paint the red over top of this, which will just give me some thin stripes on my candy cane. Plus all whatever other shapes are in here from when I gathered it. So it'll just give me an interesting shape inside the candy cane. So here's my black dye that I'm going to outline with. This here's the really thick dye, and you can look up the video how to make thick black dye, and then it will show you the process. Alrighty. Now I'm going to go ahead and, let's go ahead and dye the outline on the other side and put the surrounding turquoise on. So we'll do turquoise first. Same thing, we'll just go all around the outside edges here and let it start spreading in. And then I'll come back later and bring that turquoise in right up to the lime. But this way, any of the spreading is going to happen. It's not going to go directly into my candy cane because I left some space there. Okay, so now we'll dye the rest of the t-shirt. Like I say, I'm doing 2 colors of blue, so I'm putting my lighter color on first, the turquoise, and then I'm going to put a darker color over top of it. And that'll just give me some depth and some texture to my blues. Okay, I'm back. I had to take a little bit more of a break, and I just flipped this over, and I can see that this turquoise dye is already creeping in, and it's because I got all of this fabric here that's just barely damp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and wet this down just so I don't get any more creeping. So I'm just putting thickened water, and I'm just going to go right around the edges here just to see if I can slow some of that creeping turquoise dye down a little bit so that my candy cane doesn't turn all turquoise. Okay, now let's put a darker blue over top of that. Okay, so now I'm just going to coat over this whole shirt with the darker blue, and that's just going to give me 2 layers of blue in there. Okay, there's that. I'm going to touch up a little bit of this white here with my smaller bottle. Okay, and then I'm going to set this aside for just a minute. And we're going to do the thick red dye. I don't have any mixed up right now, so we'll just do it right here. So what I have is some of my thickened water. And this here is not quite as thick as my usual, but it's thick enough for this, what I want to be able to do is paint some red on and not have it go in too far. So this thicker dye is going to allow me to do that. So I'm going to take just a little scoop of red here. So if I need just a little bit, this is how I'll do it. I'll just put some thick water in one of my paint trays. And then what I'm going to do is just use a paintbrush and paint some of this red dye right on the top of these folds here. And you don't have to do the thick red dye. You can just put regular dye on. You just want to go real light with it. Otherwise you'll just end up with a completely red candy cane, which isn't a problem either. But if you want the red and white, this is just the way I found works nicely. And it just creates an interesting pattern because of how it was gathered up together here. Now we're going to flip this over one more time and finish the other side. Oh, I guess, did I have that in the screen? I might not even have that first shot in the screen. Sorry about that. Okay. Getting too busy, too fast here. So that's all I did on the other side, is I just painted a layer of this on right on top of these creases here. Make sure your hands are clean before you touch it, and then I'm just gathering these folds up here so that I can paint just on the tops of those creases. Okay, and there is the double candy cane. Thank you for watching. Please like and share my videos.